camera is rolling.
Okay.
And focus my shot and I have sound. Okay, could you tell me your name, please?
Jennifer Emily.
Okay. And Jennifer, describe for us the various forms of records you used to report this story.
We used court records, court files that are open to everyone. We used transcripts from trials, and we asked the district attorney to open his closed files to us. And we had asked a few times, and then finally around January or February of this year, he agreed to open them to us.
In case if I hear your hair ruffle the microphone.
Okay.
We can sort of, so I'm a little
kind of
with my ears on, but be okay. Rather have them on and have that on. Okay. Can you talk about the way in which you used the Innocence Project and the Justice Project to help inform your reporting?
We went to them and we were asking them, especially the Innocence Project. We talked to them a lot about, if there was an upcoming exoneration and the facts of a case when there was an exoneration. In the Justice Project, we contacted them as we were writing the stories and reporting, and the Innocence Project too, to get their thoughts about eyewitness testimony and what they thought the problems were, what they thought the changes should be, and that kind of thing.
In an earlier interview, you described your best day in reporting this story. What happened and what made it feel like such a triumph?
Steve and I wanted to find Wiley Fountain, who is one of the 19 exonerees from Dallas County, and he's the only one who is homeless. And we heard about him when he was first exonerated, but we hadn't talked to him since. And we thought that his case illustrated what we wanted to talk about. His lineup was flawed. He was the only person in a sweatsuit in the photo lineup when everyone else had on different clothes, and the attacker had on a sweatsuit. So we set out to find Wiley, and what we knew about him was that he hung out around this place called the Top Cat. We didn't exactly know what the Top Cat was, but we found a Top Cat catfish place near where he used to live and near where the crime occurred that he was wrongly convicted of. And so we set out, and we were driving around South Dallas, and we went to the Top Cat, and where we found this other homeless man who was in a wheelchair, and we talked to him, and he said that he knew Wiley, and that he sometimes came around there, and he would give him our card. And so we kind of drive around some more, and we go back to the Top Cat, and no, the guy hasn't seen Wiley. And we'd also heard that he collected aluminum cans to sell, and not far from there were places that took scrap metal and aluminum cans and things like that. So we start talking to owners and customers and cops who are at that station, who are at those stations, and yes, they've seen him before, but they hadn't seen him that day, or they saw him early that morning. And so it was really, really hot. I think it's July at this point in Dallas, which is very hot. And we are looking for a guy pushing a baby carriage, because that initial guy at the baby carriage, it told us that Wiley pushed a baby carriage. And so, anytime we see a baby carriage, we're, on the lookout. And so we're driving down the street, and I'm driving, and Steve sees a guy in a baby carriage. And he's like, baby carriage, baby carriage. And so I do a U-turn and pull into the parking lot of the store, and there is a guy with a baby carriage, and he says, no, I'm not Wiley Fountain. And no, actually, Wiley Fountain doesn't push a baby carriage. So, but he promises to tell Wiley that we're looking for him and to give him, our cards. And as we're walking back to my car, this guy walks by, and the man with the baby carriage walks up to him and it starts talking to him, and we're like, could that be Wiley Fountain? We're like, probably not. And it turns out it was Wiley Fountain. And one of the reasons I think it was such a great day is because we were sort of out on the street, and we were looking for someone and really having to talk to people, when a lot of the other parts of our story dealt with combing through record after record and reading lots of documents and talking to experts and that kind of thing. So you really had to use our journalism skills to find him. So it was a fun day, but it was a good day.
Great story. You just check everything. Check. Battery's still going? Okay, great. All right. You suggest that good stories for other reporters to do policies and training for both police and prosecutors in regards to the use of eyewitness testimony. Tell us more about those story ideas.
I think a good story would be that the fact that most police departments don't have policies. There are very few that actually do. So that in and of itself would be a story. Or if they have a policy, it's not a very lengthy one and it's maybe not really followed. And the same is probably true for prosecutors, that they don't really receive any training about, when a police officer brings a lineup to you, prosecutors aren't trained to say, how did that guy end up in the photo lineup? Or, how did this guy come to your attention, and questions like that. And there's really not a lot of training that goes on like that. And I think that both the Innocence Project or the Justice Project would really be able to, help a reporter, get into those type of stories.
Great. Two more questions for you. Why do you think law enforcement officials continue to use eyewitness identifications in the face of so much research that says it's notoriously inaccurate?
Because it works. You have a victim up there who says, that's the man who raped me, I'll never forget him. And, jurors are going to believe it because we want to believe what we see is what happened. And it doesn't mean that the witness is lying. The witness, if the person is wrong, they're mistaken. And it doesn't mean that all eyewitness testimony is wrong. I think that the people who want reforms, they don't want to do away with eyewitness testimony. They just want to make it better.
Okay, here's the last question. Why is it important for journalists to continue to report on this and other problems in the criminal justice system?
I think it's the best way to create...
Do you mind rephrasing the question, the question in your answer?
Okay, can you say it again?
No problem. Why is it important for journalists to continue to report on this and other problems in the criminal justice system?
Journalists should continue reporting about wrongful convictions and other criminal justice problems because it's the best way to bring attention to what's happening. If journalists don't write about it, the public doesn't know what's going on. And if people are being let out of prison because they didn't commit a crime, it's important that they were let out, but it's also important that journalists look into the reasons why people were released, why were they convicted wrongly. And that's what the story is, what led to their conviction. And I think a lot of times we do that first day story of this person was wrongly convicted and it's horrible, and this person spent 20 or sometimes 30 years in prison, but it could happen again unless we look at why it happened.
Great, thanks.
Okay.
Any other last comments or things you wanna mention?
I don't think so. I think that covered it all, I guess.
Okay. All right, thanks.
I'll go get Steve.
Thanks.